John asked softly. She didn't answer. He tried again, pointing to himself. I'm John. Key. Pointed to her, hoping she'd say her name. She looked down and whispered something in a language he didn't understand. Her voice was so soft. It almost disappeared. John didn't press her. He grabbed a blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She flinched at first, then slowly leaned into the warmth. There was something strange about her. Not just her alien features, but the way. She looked at everything, like she was seeing it for the first time. Outside, the fog thickened. Covering the windows, John checked his comms, but the signal was dead. The storm had knocked out satellite contact again. He was alone with a mysterious alien child who had appeared at his door like a ghost. That night, while she slept on a small cot near the heater, John sat at his desk, thinking. He scanned through missing persons databases, but no alerts matched her face. Was she part of a crashed ship? An escapee from something worse? Her arms had faint bruises, like someone had grabbed her too hard. John clenched his jaw. He'd seen enough pain in the galaxy to recognize fear in a child's eyes. Just as he was about to power down the screen, a sound echoed outside, scraping. Like claws on metal, John grabbed his blaster and walked slowly to the door. He opened it a crack and looked out into the white fog. Nothing, just empty snow and swirling mist. He was about to close the door when he noticed it. Footprints, huge ones, far too large for the little girl. They led up to his shelter, then stopped. No return path, no sign of retreat. He shut the door quickly and locked it. Turning, he found the girl awake, sitting up on the cot. Her eyes were wide and scared again. She looked at him, then pointed to the door, whispering one word. Hunter. John felt a chill deeper than the cold outside. What had followed her here? Was it still out there? He moved a chair under the door handle and checked the power systems. Everything still worked. But he knew this planet held things more dangerous than the cold. The girl was shaking again, so he knelt beside her. It's okay, he whispered. You're safe now. But even as he said the words, he wasn't sure he believed them. She reached out and grabbed his hand tightly. Her small fingers clung to his as if he was the only thing holding her to this world. In that moment, something shifted inside him. He didn't know her name, her species, or where she came from, but he knew he couldn't let anything hurt her. Not again. Outside, something let out a deep growl. Low and distant, the girl whimpered, burying her face into John's chest. The fog thickened. The real danger hadn't even begun. John woke up to silence. The heater still hummed. And snow tapped lightly on the windows, but something felt wrong. He sat up quickly and looked over at the cot. It was empty. The little alien girl was gone. The blanket she slept in had fallen to the floor. Still warm, no sound, no footsteps, no goodbye. John rushed to the door and yanked it open. Cold air hit his face, thick fog swirling just like last night. He looked around, but the snow was untouched. No footprints leading away from the shelter, only smooth white ground, as if she had disappeared into thin air. "Hello?" he shouted, stepping outside. "Where are you?" His voice echoed, then vanished into the cold. He searched the nearby trees, his boots crunching on fresh snow. There were no signs of a struggle, no tracks except one strange thing on a tree. Near the edge of the forest, something was carved into the bark. A circle with 3 slashes across it. He didn't recognize the symbol. But something about it made his skin crawl. John returned to the shelter. His heart heavy. She had seemed so scared, so broken, and now she was gone. He checked the heater logs, the motion sensors, even the door records. Nothing, no alarms, no signs of anyone entering or leaving. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring. At the cold cot. Maybe she was never real, he whispered. But he didn't believe that, not for a second. The warmth on the blanket, the scratches on her arms. her soft voice whispering hunter. It was all real. Too real for the next 2 days. John checked the forest every few hours. He left food near the trees, hoping she might return. But nothing came back, not her, not the hunter, not even animals. Only the wind and fog. Then, on the third night, it happened again. A knock, just like before, soft. Then louder. John stood frozen for a second, hand hovering over the blaster. Then he opened the door, and there she was. The little girl, standing in the snow, holding someone's hand. Her face was calm this time, not afraid, and beside her stood a tall, elegant alien woman with silver blue skin and glowing eyes. Her long hair fell over her shoulders like silk, and her cloak was made of something that shimmered in the snowlight. Before John could speak, the woman stepped forward. She didn't wait for an invitation. She dropped to her knees in front of him and lowered her head. "My name is Serana," she said in smooth, clear English. "You saved my daughter." John blinked, confused and overwhelmed. "I just helped her." "I didn't know." The woman looked up, her eyes full of emotion. "Where I come from." "That means everything," she whispered. "We were being hunted, separated. I thought I lost her forever, but she found you." The little girl hugged John's leg gently. She didn't say anything, but her small smile said more than words. Serana stood up slowly. She stepped closer, her eyes locked onto his. "I ask something you may not understand," she said softly, "but I ask it with my full heart." John's breath caught in his chest. "What is it?" he asked. Serana reached out, placed her hand on her chest, then extended it to him. "In our culture, to save a child is to bond with the family. I beg you," she whispered, "please, become my husband." John stared at her, completely speechless. It felt like a dream, more, maybe a mistake. I'm just a mechanic," he said, almost laughing nervously. "You don't even know me," Serana nodded, her voice firm. "I know your actions," she said. "You didn't hurt her, didn't trade her, didn't abandon her. You gave her safety, warmth, and kindness. That is more than most ever do." She stepped back, letting the snow fall between them again. "I do not ask for romance or ownership," she added. "I ask for a bond, so I may return to my people without shame. A queen without a mate is weak. My enemies will strike again, but with you beside me, they will think twice." John looked down at the little girl. She held up a small crystal, the same one she had clutched when she first came. He hadn't seen it before. She placed it in his hand, and it glowed warmly. In that moment, he felt something stir deep inside, like something ancient. Forgotten, not just a man helping a child, but a thread of destiny pulling tight. He didn't answer right away. He just stood in the doorway, holding the crystal, feeling the warmth of a bond he didn't fully understand. Behind him, the fire crackled and the heater hummed. Before him stood a queen, a daughter, and a new path that could change everything. And far off in the trees, unseen eyes were watching. John didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because of the strange energy flowing through him. The small crystal the girl had given him still glowed softly on the table. Pulsing like a heartbeat, Serana and her daughter rested in the corner of the shelter, wrapped in silence. Outside, the snow kept falling. But inside, something was changing. At dawn, John finally asked, "Who are you, really?" Serana opened her eyes slowly, her voice calm. "I told you, I am Serana," she said. "But that's not the full truth." She stood up, her silver blue cloak brushing the floor like mist. "My people call me Valeriborn, the last daughter of the Crystal House." John raised an eyebrow, unsure what that meant. "I used to rule a city beneath the ice," she continued. "A place of peace, technology, and ancient knowledge." She knelt beside her daughter and gently brushed back her hair. "But when my mate betrayed me to the warlord of shadows, everything changed." John leaned forward, you were a queen." Sarana nodded, her eyes distant. "Yes, and hunted like prey ever since." She pointed to the glowing crystal that was once part of the royal Solkarich ruler carries a piece. "When my child gave it to you, she gave you a thread too." "Our legacy," John stared at the crystal. Now realizing it wasn't just a light hit was a bond. "She trusted you without fear," Sarana said, "which is rare among my kind." Especially now, John felt pressure in his chest, not from fear, but from responsibility. He hadn't asked for any of this, but now, it was in his hands. "Why didn't you just run farther?" he asked. "We tried," Sarana whispered, "but the hunters follow our scent. They are programmed, ruthless and patient. They always find us, lest we have a protector." She looked at him directly. "A protector like you?" John laughed, quietly shaking his head. "I'm just a human with tools and a blaster." But Sarana didn't smile. "You carry honor, and that's rarer than weapons." Suddenly, the power flickered. The heater dimmed for a second, then came back. Sarana's eyes snapped to the ceiling. "They've found us again," she said, her voice sharp. John stood up, checking the scanner to energy signatures moving slowly toward the shelter. Too smooth, too perfect. They weren't animals, they were machines. "We need to go," Sarana said, already picking up her child. "Go where?" John asked. "To the shrine," she replied, "deep in the mountains. There's an ancient place. Only there can we complete the bond. Only there will my people recognize you as my chosen." John grabbed his coat, the blaster, and tucked the glowing crystal into his pocket. The cold bit harder than ever before as they stepped outside. Snow was waist-deep in some places, the wind cutting like a knife, but Sarana walked like she belonged to the storm calm. Strong, focused as they reached the edge of the forest. John noticed strange marks on the trees, circular burn patterns, fresh left by drones or hunters. "We don't have much time," Sarana said. "The shrine is half a day's walk through hostile ground." John looked down at the little girl, who now clutched his hand tightly. Her eyes glowed. But there was no fear this time, only trust. They crossed icy bridges and climbed frozen hills. Sarana told stories as they walked. Of old gods, buried machines, and sacred places of power, and of how her people used to live in harmony with humans. Long ago, before the wars, when the sun began to set, a tall mountain came into view. It was dark, smooth, and had a crack running through its center like a scar. "That's it," Sarana whispered. The heart-split peak at the base of the mountain was a stone door. Covered in ancient alien runes, Sarana pressed her hand to the stone, and the runes lit up in a spiral of blue light. The door slid open, revealing a warm chamber filled with crystals, glowing vines, and echoing silence. "This is the place of the bloodmark ceremony," she said softly. "If you choose to bond, you must stand inside the ring of soulfire." John looked at the glowing circle in the middle of the room. "Will it hurt?" he asked, half joking. Sarana stepped closer, her hand brushing his. "No," she said. "It will reveal who you really are." John stood at the edge of the circle, his heart pounding. He didn't know what this ceremony would do, or what kind of man it would turn him into. But when he looked at the little girl smiling up at him, and Sarana's proud, tired eyes watching from the shadows, he stepped forward. The soulfire rose, bright blue and silent, and everything he knew about himself began to change. The soulfire glowed blue, swirling like mist inside a circle of ancient stones. John stood at the edge, his boots crunching softly on crystal dust. Each breath he took echoed in the silent chamber like a heartbeat. Sarana stood close, her eyes full of quiet strength, beside her. The little girl clutched her cloak and watched him without blinking. "This place is alive," John whispered. He could feel its energy humming beneath his skin, like invisible strings pulling on his soul. Sarana nodded slowly. "It remembers." Every king and queen who walked here, now, it wants to know you. John stepped into the circle, and the temperature dropped instantly. His breath turned to frost in the air. Light flared under his feet, shaping strange runes he couldn't read. Suddenly, the soul fire surged upward, wrapping around him in a silent storm. He gasped as his mind was pulled somewhere else, a world of floating memories, echoing voices, and visions not his own. He saw flashes Serana standing tall in royal armor, the little girl laughing in a palace garden. Flames, screams, a betrayal from someone she once loved, and then himself. Holding the girl's hand at the shelter, her eyes full of hope. It all rushed through him like lightning. The soul fire wasn't just testing him, Mitt was searching. Searching for who he was inside, for pain, for love, for truth. He fell to his knees as the fire turned red, then gold. Pain stabbed his chest, but not from injury. It was emotion, memory, and something deeper. The fire whispered not in words, but feelings. You protected the innocent. You refused the darkness. You are worthy, outside the circle. Serana watched with her heart pounding. She had seen many step into the soul fire before. Some were rejected, others consumed. But John stood tall as the flames faded, and when he stepped out of the circle, his eyes glowed faintly, just like Serana's daughter. He collapsed forward, and Serana caught him. "You did it," she whispered. "You are one of us now." John blinked up at her, his voice weak. "I saw your pain. Your past. I saw everything." Serana nodded slowly. "Then you know why I need you. Not just as a symbol, but as a shield, as a partner." He looked at the child, who now ran to him, arms open. She hugged him tightly and whispered her name. For the first time, Luma, it was soft, beautiful, and glowing with meaning. The girl who had arrived in silence had finally spoken, but the moment of peace didn't last. A sudden loud hum shook the chamber. Cracks formed in the ceiling. John stood up fast, the crystal in his pocket now burning hot. "What is that?" He asked. Serana's face turned grim. "They tracked us here. No one has ever dared bring machines into a sacred site." John ran to the shrine entrance and looked out. In the snowy distance, black shapes moved smooth. Spider-like machines crawling over the mountainside, 3 of them, moving fast. Scanning the ground with glowing red eyes, "Warlord Tech," Serana whispered. "They are not here to talk." John turned to her, breathing hard. "We can't fight them here. It's sacred. Is there another way out?" Serana nodded toward a tunnel behind the altar. "It's an old escape path that leads through the glacier, but it's dangerous and cold." John grabbed his pack and blaster. "I'm used to that," he said, forcing a grin. Luma held out his crystal, her small hand trembling. "It will guide you," she said. "The soul fire chose you." Together, the 3 of them ran toward the hidden tunnel. Behind them, the machines began to break through the main gate, their cold metal arms slicing. Through ancient stone, one machine paused, scanning the air where John had stood just moments before. Its red eye blinked once, then turned to the mountain path. The hunt had begun again. But now, John wasn't just a mechanic. He was bonded to a queen, chosen by the soul fire and protector of a child who once stood in the snow alone, and somewhere deep inside the mountain, a new path waited, filled with danger, but also with purpose. The tunnel was dark and narrow. Their footsteps echoed through the frozen stone as they moved deeper into the glacier. John held a small crystal torch that glowed blue in his hand, Luma's gift. Serana walked ahead, guiding them through twisting paths and icy walls. Luma followed closely, holding John's coat tightly. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Even the soul fire inside John couldn't stop the bite of the ice. "We're almost through," Serana whispered. John could barely see her breath in the freezing air. Suddenly, a loud boom echoed behind them. The tunnel shook, dust falling from above. "They're here," John said. turning quickly. Metallic screeches and red lights began to appear far down the tunnel. "Keep going," Serana said firmly. John turned to fight, but Serana grabbed his arm. "You are bonded now. You're more than a shield. You're the future." He hesitated, then nodded together. They ran forward until the tunnel opened into a wide cave filled with glowing crystal roots, but waiting in the center was him. The warlord, a tall, monstrous figure in black armor. Half of his face was covered by metal, the other by scars. His voice was deep and cruel. "Well, well," he said. "The little queen returns with her pet human." Serana stepped in front of Luma, her voice steady. "I am no one's queen, not anymore. You never stopped being mine," the warlord hissed. "You and the child are my property, and I've come to collect." John stepped forward, heart pounding. "She's not yours anymore," he said. The warlord tilted his head. "Amused? You think a human can stand against me?" He laughed, a sound like cracking bone. John didn't move. The soul fire inside him began to glow through his chest, bright and steady. "I'm not just a human anymore," he said. "I'm her bond," the warlord snarled. Stepping down from the rocks, 2 metal drones flanked him, weapons aimed at Serana and Luma. "You're nothing but a weak light in the dark," he growled. John raised his hand. The crystal torch blazed like fire. "Maybe," John said. "But even a weak light can burn." He fired first, his blaster shot hitting the closest drone. Sending sparks across the ice, Serana threw up a shield of energy. Protecting Luma, the warlord rushed at John, sword drawn, glowing with ancient power. Their weapons clashed, steel against light. The impact knocked John back, but he didn't fall. Pain shot through his shoulder, but something inside him pulsed in response. The soulfire flared, wrapping around his arm like armor. He moved faster, stronger than before. Serana shouted something in her old language, words of power. The cave trembled as crystals lit up. Responding to her call, Luma held her hands together, whispering to the crystal in her pocket. A beam of light shot from it, striking one of the drones and turning it to dust. John grinned. "Nice shot," he said. Luma smiled for the first time during the fight. But the warlord wasn't done. With a roar, he knocked John to the ground and raised his blade high. "This ends now," he snarled. John looked up, his body aching but his heart full. "No," he said. "This begins now." He rolled to the side, the warlord's blade slamming into the stone. John grabbed his own weapon and fired point-blank into the warlord's chest. The armor cracked, sparks flew, and the warlord staggered. Back in rage, Serana stepped beside John, hands glowing with power. "Together," she whispered. She and John combined their strength. A blast of energy burst from them, pure blue light that struck the warlord and sent him crashing into the cave wall. Silence followed. Smoke rose, ice dripped from the ceiling. The warlord didn't move. His armor broken, his blade shattered. Serana approached carefully. "You're done," she said. The warlord's eyes flickered. "For now," he rasped. "Others will come. They always do." Serana looked at John, then down at Luma. "Let's them," she said. "We are not running anymore." They left the cave together, John limping. Serana holding Luma's hand. The ice behind them began to collapse, sealing the path. For the first time in a long while, the mountain was quiet. The threat had been stopped, but something deeper had begun. Not just a bond of survival, but a family born in fire, forged in cold, and bound by something stronger than fear. Choice. The snow had stopped falling. The mountain wind was still. And for the first time in weeks, John breathed in silence. He sat by the edge of a quiet cliff, overlooking a frozen valley glowing under twin moons. His shoulders still ached, and his clothes were torn, but inside, something had changed. Behind him, Serana and Luma worked to build a fire. Not just for warmth, but for peace. They were safe. For now, John stared at the horizon, still thinking. About the warlord's words, "There will be more," he had said. And maybe he was right. But something in John had stopped being afraid. He heard soft footsteps behind him. Serana approached, her long cloak flowing behind her like smoke. She sat beside him, silent for a moment. Then she said quietly, "You fought like one of us, John." Smiled faintly. "I'm still just a mechanic." Serana looked at him with those glowing eyes. "No," she said. "You're something more now." She opened her palm, revealing the piece of crystal Luma had once given him. It had changed now, shaped like a small pendant, glowing gently. Serana placed it in his hand. "In my people's ways," she said, "when a queen loses her mate and survives the trial of blood, she must choose again, and you've chosen me." He asked softly. Serana nodded. "Not because you fought," she said, "but because you never asked for anything, yet gave everything." John looked at her, uncertain. "I don't know how to be what you need," he said. She leaned her head slightly toward him. "You already are." They sat in silence, the fire crackling behind them. Luma came running over, carrying a warm blanket and 2 glowing fruits from a tree nearby. She handed one to John, the other to Serana. Then she sat between them, leaning her tiny head on John's arm. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her trust said everything. John looked down at her. "I never had a family," he whispered. Serana placed her hand gently over his. "You do now." Night fell slowly, stars beginning to appear in the sky. Serana stood and held out her hand. There is a bond ceremony still left, one not of fire, but of heart. John raised an eyebrow. Curious, she smiled gently. "It's simple," she said. "We share breath under starlight, with no fear." He stood and followed her into a small clearing near the edge of the trees. There, she faced him, placed her hand gently on his chest. Luma stood at the edge of the clearing, watching, quiet and still. Serana leaned forward, her forehead touching his. Their breath mingled, warm against the night air. No words were spoken, but something passed between them: peace, trust, the echo of survival. In that moment, the stars above seemed to grow brighter. The soul fire inside John pulsed once warm and calm. And Serana's eyes closed as if she had waited a lifetime for this moment. They stood like that for what felt like hours. Not lovers, not strangers, something in between. Bound not by blood or race, but by choice, Luma ran into their arms, wrapping both in a tight embrace. Her little voice whispered, "Now we are whole." The next morning, they began walking away from the mountains, toward a place Serana called Hearthvale, a hidden valley where survivors from her people still lived in hiding. John didn't know what waited there, but he no longer feared the unknown. As they walked, hand in hand, he glanced at Serana. "You sure your people will accept a human?" She smirked. "Not at first," she said, "but when they see what you carry in your heart, they'll kneel before you." John laughed. "I'm not looking for a throne." Serana's voice softened. "Then you'll be the first king, worthy of one." And so they walked together, a former queen, a lost child, and a man who had only wanted to survive. Now something stronger held them together. A bond beyond species, beyond fear, beyond the stars. The journey to Hearthvale took 6 days. 6 days of frozen paths, quiet hills, and long nights around the fire. But each night, something changed. Luma smiled more. Serana rested deeper. And John he laughed again. When they finally reached the hidden valley, the ice gave way to green hills and warm light. Hearthvale wasn't grand, but it was alive, tall trees, glowing flowers. Homes carved into the cliffs like giant nests. People stared as Serana stepped forward, whispers rising. Through the air, she has returned with a child, and human. John felt every eye on him. He held Luma's hand tighter. Not for her, but for himself. He had faced monsters, fire, and death. But this, being judged by her people, made his hands shake. Serana stood tall and lifted her voice. "This is John," she said, "the man who saved my daughter when all others turned away. He has fought for me, bled for me, and stood beside me without being asked. And I have chosen him." Silence followed. Then an elder stepped forward. His skin was pale with deep runes carved into his arms. He studied John with tired eyes, then looked at Luma child. He said gently, "Do you accept him as your guardian?" Luma stepped forward bravely and nodded. "He is my safe place," she said. "He is my home." The elder smiled. "Then so he shall be." Cheers broke out, soft at first, then rising like wind through the valley. People came forward, offering hands, food, blankets. John stood frozen for a moment, unsure. Then Serana leaned into him and whispered, "They see what I saw." Over the next few days, John helped repair shelters, taught simple tech, and played with the children. At night, he shared stories of Earthwoo, blue oceans, busy cities, and warm coffee. The people listened like children around a campfire. They had lost so much, yet here was a man from another world who made them believe again. One evening, Serana stood beside him on a high cliff, watching the stars. "They will name this age after you," she said softly. "I didn't come to be a legend." John replied. She smiled. "No legend ever does." They stood quietly for a while. Luma asleep beside them, her head resting in John's lap. He ran his fingers gently through her soft hair. "I was nobody before," he whispered. Serana touched his cheek. "And now you are everything." Days passed, then weeks. John no longer felt like a guest. He had stopped counting time. Each sunrise brought purpose, sunset brought peace. He and Serana didn't speak often of love, but it lived in their hands, their eyes, and the way they moved together. It wasn't loud or rushed, it was calm-like. Roots growing deep, slow, and unbreakable. Luma began calling him father without asking. Just one day, the word slipped from her lips. John froze, but then smiled, because it felt right. One morning, Serana placed a simple woven crown on John's head, made of crystal vines and starlight threads. She didn't announce it to the people. She just said, "You are not a king because of blood. You are king because of heart." And from that day forward, Hearthvale began to change. New families came from far places. Fear began to fade, and stories of the human bond spread across the stars. Not tales of war or conquest, but of a little girl in the snow, a mechanic with no title, and a queen who knelt not in power but in love. Together, they built something rare, a new kind of family, a new kind of kingdom, not born from fear, but from kindness. Not made of blood, but of choice. And on quiet nights, when the valley slept, John would hold Luma close, kiss Serana's hand, and whisper, "I didn't save you. You saved me."